It's an episode of Two Women Talking, another episode of Two Women Talking. Yeah, didn't do the vocal warm-ups before this one. I think Song and I are both like, right now on this one. But
I woke up about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, and it's just that time of year, right, where everybody's dragging their ass.
Yeah.
Not literally like my dog does on the carpet, metaphorically. And we're going to have to be really specific with language for this one, because we're talking about pee-pee. Porn and princesses. Now, what are you guys doing? Song and I, as we're wont to do, we're just batting stuff about during the week. And we started talking about fantasy and wish fulfillment and how really there's a lot of overlap between the attitudes people have towards Disney princesses and porn. Now, let us explain. Before we get started, I want to, because you guys know I'm big on facts, and I want the ability for us to say whatever we want within YouTube and other guidelines. So I just want to present the data about this kind of stuff right off the top. And I pulled this because there's a lot of misconceptions about both these things. So Song, do you want me to start with the data about problematic porn use? Or do you want me to start with why girls, 8 to 12-year-old girls, actually like Disney princesses?
Let's start with the porn use.
Okay. So no one knows why some people actually develop problematic porn use. The only moderate association, it seems the only real correlation in studies of any size, was using porn for stress reduction. That's why people end up getting problematic pornography use. Now, obviously, by far, the reason people report watching porn was sexual pleasure. Now, the problem with self-reported studies is people don't always know why they do what they do. And the biggest study I could find came out of Hungary. So I don't know, maybe Hungary is a particularly kinky people. I don't know, but it was a pretty good study. It included in many samples as many women as men, married couples, single people, people in a relationship, gay people, bisexual people. They went all over the map. So, I mean, perhaps that is why they couldn't find correlations anywhere. But I thought that was interesting, because as we get into more sort of narrative anecdotal stuff, I think that's important for people to keep in mind. The Disney princess one, I loved. I love this study because, first of all, it was done by Brigham Young University.
Oh my God.
The Mormons are coming to our rescue here. But they actually bothered to ask 8 to 12-year-old girls why they like Disney princesses, which apparently nobody had done before. When did this study come out? 2019.
Oh my God.
2019 Song. No one had asked.
It was way before then when I started seeing articles about, specifically from feminists who were like, I tried not to let my daughter, I didn't want to expose her to the toxic messaging of Disney princesses, but she started wearing a dress anyway.
Yeah, and what's interesting is this study found, as I tend to say, kids are a lot smarter than adults give them credit for. Yes. So the Brigham Young researchers grouped the reasons girls like princesses into specifically Disney princesses into 4 basic buckets. One are what they called the virtuous, who looked at the princesses first and foremost as positive personality traits: kindness, courage, having a sense of adventure. That was the first group of girls they found. Their predominant interest was sort of inner beauty. Statements regarding outward appearance on these 8 to 12-year-olds ranked pretty low. So for parents worried that, Disney princesses are going to turn their girls into superficial brats, not so much. Now, there was another group, and this is what I like about this study, that they did acknowledge that some girls like Disney princesses for what they called the lifestyle. They called them the royalists. I love the names they came up with. They clearly workshopped this data. basically these girls grow up into adults who are fascinated by people like Markle and the what's his name, Catherine. I can't.
Kate
Megan.
Middleton.
Kate Middleton, right? I never know what to call them anymore because technically you're not supposed to call her Kate Middleton because she's now Catherine Duchess of Windsor. Everything's moved up one.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, so she's not Kate Middleton anymore. She's Catherine Duchess of Windsor. And I try to get this right just because I like being precise. But yeah, these were girls who the so-called critical scholarship focuses on, right? The
This
outward
is the
beauty,
group I'm in.
yeah, the gowns, the crowns. I think you're kind of in a few groups because I see you in the virtuous group as well. I mean that was definitely where I landed.
I mean, I recently retweeted some pictures of really pretty tiaras and said, if anyone wants to get me something for my birthday.
Oh, there you go.
Which my best friend rolled his eyes and said, that's one of the most you things you've said today.
I don't see. I'm one of those people, and I know this is a bit of a derail right now. I don't like getting people useful things for their birthday for two reasons. One, it sucks. Get somebody something nice for their birthday, okay? Unless they're one of those really practical people who likely wear Birkenstocks with socks. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, I'm kidding. But, okay, some people like getting useful things for their birthday. But
My best friend gets me a year of Disney Plus.
see, that's a good gift, right?
Yeah.
Because that is actually pretty expensive. And that's not necessarily something that you can justify the cost of, but you're going to enjoy the crap out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it started because he was like, you have to watch The Mandalorian. And I'm like, I don't have the money for Disney Plus. So he's like, fine, I'll get you a year of it.
You know
you
what?
have to watch it with me.
I think I might start to get you as like a broker because you can't buy Disney Plus subscriptions for people across country boundaries. There are a few people I want to get US Disney Plus subscriptions for this kind of gift, but they're in the US and I can't do it. It drives me crazy. I've tried every workaround on the planet. But yeah, so getting somebody a practical gift, if they really want it, is fine. But if they're not specifically asking, no, don't do it. Because one, you won't get the right thing.
Yeah.
If it needs to be useful, it's very specific, right? And two, you can end up accidentally implying things that don't go over well. I knew a guy who got his wife exercise equipment for her birthday one year.
Oh God.
It was a disaster.
I scroll the Am I the Asshole on Reddit. And mostly just because I enjoy the drama. Mm-hmm. There was one where this guy was like, my wife said she wanted this vacuum, so I got it for her birthday.
Oh, God. Oh, Lord. See, that's a tool. That's not a gift.
Exactly.
Right. And this, I mean, this goes into the third category, which I can see a lot of people doing. I am not one of these people, but they're called the dreamers. No, not kids who are brought to the US as under the age of 3. But the dreamers also like the princess lifestyle, but for different reasons. They said, and these are 8 to 12-year-olds, okay, who highly rank the statement, watching Disney princess movies makes me forget about the bad things in my life. Which is both tragic and very self-aware for an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
And they said that romance, and this is why I think this might be you song more than the royalist category, romance were important to these participants and indicating that they recognize the importance of loving relationships in their own lives. They saw the lives of the princesses as a life they'd like to have to be able to get out of their current circumstances. Some of the girls had talked about the fact they were bullied. So we kind of feel like there's a part either going on at home or school. They escaped into the world of the princesses. Like that's a valid thing. And I like that they separated that from, those girls that, and you'll like song in this article that the image they used for the dreamers was the 2015 Kenneth Branagh Cinderella.
Aw.
Yeah, so there you go. And then there are and this is probably me, the girls spelt GRRRLS. Girls were more interested in what the princesses do rather than who they are. They like to see the princesses fight their own battles and succeed. These girls had strong optimism and belief in their potential, and they were drawn to princesses such as Mulan, Moana, and Merida. And I think that even, the fact they use the term girls, I sound like the Cowardly Lion from the Wizard of Oz there. But Riot Girl punk was big when the 90s Disney's revival happened. And that's why I liked I liked Ariel because she was weird, right? She brushed her hair with a fork. I understood that. That was something I would do. I actually did that after I saw The Little Mermaid. And Belle was bookish, so on and so forth. So, I mean, this makes sense to me. 10-year-old girl quoted, standing up for yourself or someone else is really nice. I had to stand up for myself at school and my friends weren't being really nice to me. It made me feel good. So I like when the princesses do it too. So those are the 4 main categories why 8 to 12-year-old girls like Disney princesses. Now, personally, Saga, this is where I'm going to get into the discussion here. I would like to see a study where they take a group of girls at 8 to 12 and then they get them after like the 7th or 8th grade. So like re-interview them in the 9th grade and then re-interview them as adults. Do a real longitudinal study. Because it's that grade 7, grade 8 that the shit really hits the fan for teen girls, right? Yeah. That's when the gender segregation gets really ridiculous. That's when appearance and being proper in one way or the other, and it's not even, quote unquote, properly feminine now, because that's not in certain groups right now, right? It's either properly feminine or, I hate this dichotomy. I don't think it's real, but properly feminine or properly feminist sort of thing of if girlhood and the teenage years are very, very restricted in what's permissible to do and what'll get you intensely ostracized and socially punished. Right. And I think that a lot of the critical theory on the Disney princesses, as well as with, adult content porn, is a lot of people reading their own adult damage into this stuff, right? And the problem is, I think that if you ask some of these critical theory types, which would you rather your teenage girl watched? I think some of them might say porn, possibly just
Definitely.
to be an edgelord. Yeah, you think so too. Okay. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to juxtapose these two topics, because as much as I don't like the marketing around the Disney princesses, and we can get to why, but I'll start this and open it up to you because I've done a lot of talking setting up all this information. As much as I don't like the marketing surrounding Disney princesses, I actually think the content itself is quite positive. And I struggle to understand, outside of people are just working out their own damage, why people need to reach for harm, seeing as there's so many harmful impacts on teens of all genders. Why reach for it? You know what I mean?
And I wish I had a link or some more information, but I do remember hearing about a study where they actually looked into, are these dolls like Barbie and Disney Princess and stuff like this, do they actually have negative effects on girls' body image? And they didn't find any correlation. And
that's interesting.
This might seem like a slightly off topic, but I mean, I was talking to my best friend last night about Bruce Timm's art.
Yeah.
And specifically, I was like, I love the way he draws girls. The way he draws guys, I can take or leave that. Because they have these just absurdly broad shoulders and this lantern jaw that it's not even a lantern, it's a brick.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's very pop art from the 1940s and 50s, but in a
yeah,
different way that Darwin Cook, rest in peace, adapted it.
yeah, it's visual symbolism.
Yeah.
I can't remember the proper phrase right now,
Well,
but
it's Art Nouveau. It's a throwback to that era.
I think it's much more Art Deco
Yeah, maybe Art Deco.
than
Yeah.
Nouveau, because
Okay.
Nouveau is very soft, whereas Deco is more
Okay.
hard
I mean,
lines.
it's also clean line art and easy to animate.
Yes,
That's a
and
big
so it's
part
like
of it. Yeah.
yeah, so like I totally understand it, but it's like so. I've talked about how I love Eret, Son of Eret from How to Train Your Dragon.
Mm.
And the thing is, his design, he has a really long chin.
Yeah.
In the design. And it's like I can look at him and I've watched enough animation that I know, okay, this is a visual indicator.
Right.
That's
Right.
supposed to tell me something about the character. So in my head, I'm doing a translation
Yeah.
of what he would actually look like as a human. And it's like I don't so I've had people go, he looks weird. And it's like, look, if you compared him to a Bruce Timm guy, you don't look at Superman in the animated universe and go, oh, but he has that weird chin. It's you understand that it's an indication of a strong jaw and strong
Right.
features.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I think we don't give kids enough credit that we can understand, or they can understand that Barbie's not real.
Oh, I mean, as a kid that didn't like Barbie and enjoyed swapping the heads on different Barbies because I thought it was hilarious. Yeah, I mean, Barbie made me angry as a kid, but that wasn't because of the doll. That was because of pressures other humans put on associated with the ideal of the doll, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know why, as a 10-year-old, I was aware of that. But there's a reason that my guy, when I was a early end of teenager, was Beast from X-Men.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it just felt like nothing in media really represented me in the 80s because it was so um toy gendering hit its low point in the 70s and then started creeping back up in the 80s to a high point in the 90s. And then it started dropping back down again some. And I don't think that the Disney Princess merchandise line created that. I think people get correlation and causation mixed up on that one.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't driving it. It was a reaction to it, right?
Yeah.
Like they made the dress up dresses and things like that, and they separated the girls section of the Disney store from the kids section of the Disney store, which I despise, but they did that because of parental demand. That has always been the driver of what they do with children's toy marketing.
And I mean,
Always, always, always.
here's the thing. When they first started the actual Disney Princess line, I don't remember the name of the guy they brought in to head it up and get it going. But for research, he went to some of like the Disney on Ice shows
Yeah.
and everything. And he looked around and he said, well, all these girls, they're in these dress up dresses
Mm-hmm.
and they're wearing the tiaras. So let's just release those.
A former
So,
Nike executive, right?
I think
Yeah,
so.
Andy Mooney.
Possibly. I read the article years ago and I kind of skim over names.
Yeah, I mean Nike was king of branding in the 90s. The way they made that swoosh work,
Yeah.
right? And launched the Disney Princess line without utilizing any focus groups and with minimal marketing. And within 2 years, it had generated about 300 million. By 2012, the division had increased revenue to 3 billion, making it the top seller of consumer entertainment products globally. Right?
And that was before Elsa.
Yeah,
Oh, you said 2013. So
no,
that was
2012.
Elsa. Oh yeah.
2012. So it was before Elsa. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can't manufacture that. You can't create that, right?
Yeah.
There was a demand there. Um,
Well, like I
and
said, I would see articles from these mothers who would be like, I'm very feminist, you know, I'm raising my daughter to be strong and independent and all this. So why does she want pink? I
well, that's her.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I even one of my jobs, I wear really extreme eyeshadow. I can't get good pictures of it, so I haven't ever really posted it
Mm-hmm.
online. But like I wear really bright, colorful eyeshadow. And one day I had this really bright blue, and a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of people said they loved it. But one guy was like, I wish I could get my daughter into blue because right now everything is pink.
Mm.
And I'm just thinking, well, what's wrong with that? And like, I think it wasn't so much that it was pink, it was just that everything had to be pink. But I'm
Right.
also just like, she's a 7-year-old girl.
Well, and I find that a lot of girls who have an older brother, they super embrace girly. And this is
Yeah.
what happens with child development. It actually goes the other way. That girls start to recognize their gender identity earlier than boys and go, they learn the social codes of pink and purple means it's for me. And then boys, a year or two later go, ew, that's not for me because that's pink and purple. That's a girl's thing. So I'm not going to touch it. And that's not that is an expression of gender identity, but that's not gender identity itself. It's the programming we put into kids, right?
Well, it's interesting because I remember I loved pink when I was younger, but for the past 15 years, I didn't let myself like pink.
Because of the politics of it.
I don't know if it was even that or even if I was just trying to prove something,
Interesting.
but it's really only in the last, like, then I started doing like character aesthetics
Right.
because I have several characters. I have one character where someone commented, I'm half expecting to find out that her hair is only red from dye and that it's actually pink.
Yeah, because she's so
Like
pink.
she's so pink. And you know, I would love it. I would love scrolling Pinterest and seeing all the pretty pink stuff, but then I'd be like, oh, but not actually for me. I'm black. I'm I'm all black. I'm all dark colors. But then I'm like, okay, but what if I let myself admit that I'm pink?
Yeah,
It's
what
been really
changes?
freeing.
Yeah, I mean, with Ed and Red's Night Party,
Mhm.
the stylist put me in a lot of pink because of the lighting design and a bunch of other things. And I'd always like quietly be grumbling, but I didn't say anything because the whole point of having a stylist is that what the fuck do I know? Right. And I kind of went, I got to get over myself here in terms of this is a job and this is what the job requires. And in part because I was, the only female co-host in the history of the show, I got what she was doing with the statement. So it's like,
Mhm.
all right, that's the character. And I had to admit, it didn't look bad. And it's certain shades of pink I
Mhm.
like better than others. And obviously, cuts and styles of clothing and things like that matter a lot too. But the funny thing is that the color preferences, was it the 40s or the 20s they switched? It used to be pale blue, was because it was a gentle, soft color, right? Pink was the color that your cheeks got
It was
flushed if
light
you
red.
exerted yourself. Yeah, it was no, that was not a proper feminine color. Pale
It
yellow, pale blue
I
was.
bel I believe it was the 40s because I've heard it connected to Hitler.
Oh, interesting, because the department stores finally started doing focus grouping, and they actually found that parents liked pink for girls, blue for boys better. Had nothing to do with the kids.
I mean, pink is a very floral color. Well,
Sure.
I guess blue is too. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's something about And maybe it is just social programming that it's like it just feels girly.
Yeah, and you know what? Quite honestly, it really doesn't matter why someone likes a freaking color. They actually find that the most I think red and blue are the most popular colors for men and women. It's kind of interesting. And the fact that I know this stuff off the top of my head, it's because I lectured on gender performance and genders as systems for so darn long in video game design courses. Uh, but like that's the thing, right? These are all codes. And then we get into the very different codes in, adult content, pornography, OnlyFans, things like that. We get a very different kind of femininity. It's still female dominant. It's still a space where people make money, where women make money. Adult is one of the only industries where women, as a rule, get paid more than men. And yet the code is so different. And then you get into feminist porn and gay cinema porn and all the different coding. And that's when I start to wonder, is any of this real? Is this just a big exercise in ego? Again, because the number one reason that people said they watch porn is basically to make masturbation more pleasurable or easier, they said. I'm like, easier? Like, what are you grading yourself on how effectively? I don't know. I shouldn't mock. This is a sensitive, I wasn't intending to mock, but I shouldn't come across as mocking because we know how sensitive some
Yeah.
people are here, right? And I think that to me has always been the correlation, that the whole Disney princess thing touches something very sensitive in women, where, and pardon the pun, with touches something very sensitive, because then we get pornography and the things it says about men, or the things culture thinks it says about men, and this dichotomy of, you know if it's something men enjoy that is sensitive and vulnerable and personal, then it's harming. If it's something for women that is sensitive and vulnerable and personal, then it's harmful, right? Men act, women are acted upon, men are dangerous, women are victims. We just keep seeing this again and again and again and again.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I question all of it, right? And this is where I'm torn, because Song and I have talked about this off air a lot. I do see what people are saying when they talk about, if somebody talks about their own personal, problematic or harmful relationship with pornography, I'm going to believe them. If they say it
Yeah.
had a bad effect on them, I believe them. I think it has a lot to do with the type of stuff they're watching as much as anything else. Because, I mean, I used to interview porn stars for a living. I saw a lot of this stuff. I know it's not all created equal,
Yeah.
right? Some of it's very high concept and fun, and some of it's parody, and some of it is done deliberately to allow women to get enjoyment of it too, and some of it's not, right? Some of it is downright disturbing when I look at it. And I do think that we get this all wrong, right? But there is something to people who do have a negative relationship with this stuff. And that's what I want to talk about, the feedback loop, right?
Uh-huh.
What's called a reinforcing spirals model. Someone comes into princesses, someone comes into porn with brainworms, right? The stuff they select is going to reinforce the brainworms,
Yeah.
right? Because I know you feel more strongly than I do, Song, about some of the correlations here. What do you think this brainworm negative impact connection is?
I mean, especially when it comes to the pornography,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm trying to find the right words. Sorry. Guys, I've been sick for the last week and a half or so my
Yeah.
brain's not operating at
I mean,
100%.
maybe I can prime the pump here, because the thing for me that bugs me is that part of the fun with some of the, let's say, more advanced moves
Mhm.
is the technique, right? Leading up to it, the prep, making that fun.
Yeah.
And they skip that in a lot of stuff. Like, I'm gonna use euphemisms because of YouTube, but you don't take a running start on a rear mount, guys. Like, you need to warm that up, right?
You
And
don't take a running start on any mount.
yeah, and
And you know,
people,
I think now I'm starting to find the words.
there you
A,
go. See, it
a,
worked.
a lot of it is going to be affected by how you already view
Right.
relationships and sexuality. So like if you have, and guys, I'm not going off studies. I'm just going off what I think and feel, basically. And
That's why
I
we started with
think
the studies. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think if you come at something
Pardon the pun.
where you don't you don't understand how women generally come to these things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't understand how things actually work, then
Yeah.
you are going to have an extremely unhealthy view. And we get the same thing with romance novels, which, let's be honest, it's just porn for women.
Oh,
But
agreed. Well, I
there,
mean, yeah.
there's a reason I've been reading them. But there is a very big difference that the thing about romance novels is, in general, women are much more interested in having an emotional connection and having character in the story, basically, and having that build up. And even I read some, and it's like, even they don't get the sex right. And it's
Well,
all like
yeah.
jumping straight to stuff. And I'm like, that foreplay was not fast enough. And it is
Yeah.
honestly making me think worse of the hero. And so often, especially because right now with writing, with reading, I don't have a long attention span. I do not
Mm-hmm.
want to be reading 400, 700 page books.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've been focusing on novellas that I can read in like 2 to 4 hours. So not a lot of space for character development, admittedly, but it's still just this complete focus on the sex, and
Yeah.
the characterization is so inconsistent, and it just jumps around, and it's like, oh, this is my motivation, this is what I'm doing. I'm sorry, how did you guys fall in love in the last 15 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then everything is solved with one conversation towards the end, and I'm like, this was so disappointing. But again, it's like we get these male characters, and they're just so fixed on the physical appearance. And you know, there's this meme of like men writing women badly, which I've
Mm-hmm.
absolutely seen. And there's this one passage that gets put around where it's like it's like all about the breasts.
Mm-hmm.
And like she walked down the stairs boobily or something.
Oh,
And,
yeah. I saw that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like I the way women write men to that the only thing they care about is the physical appearance and getting straight to the sex. I'm like, that's that's women writing men badly, because it
Picking
comes
up on what they think the social expectation is. Yeah.
exactly. And I get that it's also trying to establish the desire straight off,
Right.
but I'm like, you're just being hurtful, I feel. And you're not actually, and it's like, obviously, you know, I talk about not everything needs to have this big grand statement.
Yeah.
about life, or so it doesn't need to be social commentary, it doesn't need to be an allegory for anything,
Right.
and it doesn't need to have a deep message to make things good or for it to be good. And but I'm still like, there comes a point where you're having an anti-message.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it, an anti-message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where you're just perpetuating these ideas of, oh, men only want one thing.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
I do think when there is too much focus on pornography and when there's too much consumption of it, I think that can lead to a bit of a loop where men do become, and not just men, but there is more focus on it, and it starts to color everything else. But I also think, I do worry, because like I said, with romance novels, there's character, there's personality. The characters want things. So it's
Right.
like, even in the one I was reading last night, they still had wants outside of the bedroom. They were very
Right.
surface level and they weren't well written, but they were there at least.
But
There
that
was an
stuff's
attempt.
connected, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas with so much porn, there's no personality.
Yeah.
It's it there's no character. There's no anything to them. Just this raw lust.
That's why I like the parody stuff so much. It's funny, right? These are a bunch of people that have a pretty good sense of humor about stuff. And I think a lot of the parody stuff can be quite cute at times. The costumes are cute. And I remember they did a Star Wars porn parody once, and people kind of freaked out about it, but it was so cutesy and soft. And then you get into this inner child stuff that comes out
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of stuff, and I think people get really uncomfortable with it because they don't understand it for what it is. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of stuff I think is actually healthy self-exploration. But what I think the problem is that, that loop that I talked about, that you touched on, that your your brainworms interact with this deeply personal content,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it starts reinforcing your previous insecurities because of the fact that this is highly fantasized, highly idealized, and that's why, the animation styles in the Disney princess stuff and, Bruce Timm superheroes correlate with the stuff that goes on in porn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you've ever this says a lot about my life. If you've ever been on porn sets, you are aware they do a lot of prep before they start the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that the average consumer, I don't know why they don't want to see the prep as part of it, because to me that's part of the fun,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want it for whatever reason. Now, it's not the people making the movie or making the video setting that desire. They're responding to that desire. They can't control the fact that, especially for porn made for men, they don't want to see the delayed gratification. And my question is, why? Like, where is the damage coming in? Because this ties into so much. This ties into, 16-year-old guys thinking everything is miserable if they don't have sex, which throws me, because I'm not that old, right? And when I was 16, that was still kind of young
Mm-hmm.
for sexual experiences. And it kills me that in only a few decades, everything has gotten way out of control the other way. Like there's no normal here, right? It happens when it happens, and everybody's on a different timeline. And I do think that all of these things that have a heavy element of fantasy, the sometimes stuff I learned this from a lecture I saw at the Japanese Cultural Center about basically garbage anime. Not the high end stuff, the just junk with characters where the eyes take up half their head and it's ridiculous garbage, right?
Okay, so I need to say this really quick. The eyes taking up half the head is a little less so now, but for a while it was a big trend, specifically in shoujo.
Yeah.
And shoujo is where we do tend to see those. And there was this one artist, oh my gosh, I forget her name. It wasn't Aizawa. Aizawa was Nana. She has a very punk style. But there's this series, she did Medupuri and something else that was something with a moon related name that was really big. But she specifically had this style with these huge, I'm putting my fingers on my face as if people can see, just these huge eyes.
Yeah.
And so for a while that was a trend. And recently I've been looking back at my favorite mangaka is Yu Watase.
Okay.
And I absolutely love her. I did a thread on Twitter the other night about how much she influenced me, and I've been looking at her stuff again, and I'm like, oh, this makes me want to do more adventurous stuff with my covers. But I know great. I'm probably I kind of doubt I'll be doing some epic style poster with 7 characters on it.
That's nice when something inspires you that way, though.
Yeah. So, well, she has this beautiful watercolor style painting.
Oh, okay.
And if you've seen my art is like heavy acrylics slathered on the page.
Right.
It's very heavy and these deep colors. And I'm like, okay, but I wish I could get that light watercolor like effect. I can't figure it out. Yeah. Even when I used watercolors, I was never able to do it.
Like there's a shining example of somebody who's just telling a story, right? That you connected to. And that's the thing about some of that. People will recommend an anime to me and I'll watch it. And it's like, okay, this is not my thing. And I've become defaulted to say, this is not my thing. Because if somebody recommends something to you, it's because they like it. And they're telling you something about themselves. They're sharing something about themselves. And I don't want to be a jerk about it. I save up my jerk for people who really deserve it. Right. But what this lecturer pointed out is that garbage media tells us a lot about the hopes and dreams of a culture. And Japan is an example of a culture where, their birth rate is really low. The marriage rate is low. They're not, I think Japan has the least sex of any country. That could be wrong, but they're sort of known as they break the porn sexual activity correlation because there's so much porn in Japan. So, I mean, there's something else going on there. And I think that these knee jerks about this stuff and romance is the same way. I mean, I have a really warped sense of what's romantic. It tends not to align with the stuff in media. And I mean, and that's why, I don't think that some of we have a really warped view of relationships in media in general. The fact that somebody said to me on Twitter yesterday that WandaVision was a realistic depiction of somebody coping with her trauma.
Okay, so just slightly play devil's advocate here. I didn't see them say realistic. They said understandable.
Okay, understandable. Sorry, you're right. Thank you for the correction. Yeah, understand. Still, what?
Well, when I read that tweet, what I thought was, at least from my perspective, it wasn't justifiable, but I understand how Wanda got there.
I don't, because we didn't see Wanda and Vision's relationship on camera. Joss Whedon drops us in halfway. I wanted to see how, and maybe they can go back with the Vision series and backfill this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
desperately hoping they do this, because one of the things that,
Well,
like,
I mean, here's the thing. In Civil War, there's a Age of Ultron. Sorry.
yeah,
In
that
Age of
scene in the bedroom, right? Yeah.
not even that. There is a scene in Age of Ultron during the battle where Vision catches Wanda and, you know, scoops her up and flies her out of danger. It's like a 2-second thing.
Right.
I saw articles going, this is a reference to the fact that they're a couple in the comics.
Uh-huh.
And so that was what got the shipper started. And the thing is, once a shipper, and not even just shippers, but a lot of people, they see, once you get something that gets them started and that gets their mind thinking in that direction, they'll
Right.
start to input context themselves.
Yeah.
So, and I saw this especially, so Tumblr had this thing where they would do these deep analyses
Yeah.
of things. There was a joke that would be me having to write a 1,000-word essay. Oh my God, this is too much. It's awful. Me writing a long post on why Loki blinked at one point. Not me, to be clear.
It wasn't a dry contact lens.
Yeah. No, it's like, this is why he blinked at Thor, because he really loves it. And it's like they
Wait, what? Wait. They shipped adopted brothers?
oh yeah.
What?
No, the most popular ship from Frozen is still Anna and Elsa.
What?
Yeah,
See,
no.
this is the stuff. This is culture. What is going on here? I do not believe that any cultural force creates this. And
okay, here's my theory.
okay,
I think we have gotten to the point where romance and sex have become so intertwined
yeah,
that people don't know how to be attracted to something without sexualizing it.
I think it's a safer thing to talk about than feelings. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to make 2 points here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember after Guardians of the Galaxy came out, again on Tumblr, I saw a post where this artist had done a quick little comic about coming out of the theater and thinking, no one can ever know that I'm sexually attracted to a raccoon. And
But
I'm
it's Bradley Cooper. I mean, come on, man.
Exactly. And I'm like, you're not attracted to the raccoon. And we saw the same thing with the Lion King too, where
the Disney furry eye fucking. Yeah.
yeah. But even more, these girls who were just like, oh my God, Kovu was so attractive. And I'm like, you're not attracted to the lion. You're not attracted to the raccoon. You are attracted to the attitude. But
right,
especially nowadays, where attraction has been so boiled down to physicality, they can't separate the two. So they're like, oh no, why am I attracted to this animated lion? No, it's his attitude. And here's the thing. Oh no, I was going to make another point on something. Okay, so another note really quick, because I don't want to forget this, because it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. So we get, I saw this especially with Steven Universe, where people would do these,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I have an immediate reaction to that fandom.
It's just the best example, because it's one thing when people were doing like these in-depth analysis of the MCU or something,
right?
Or Rise of the Guardians. It's like everything they did, it was based on something.
Right.
For the most part. Some of them went weird places with it. But with Steven Universe especially, I saw they would do these in-depth analysis and they would fill in the holes.
Yeah.
So it's like I was first exposed to Steven Universe through Tumblr and these long posts people would do talking about, oh, this character's psychology and this and that. And so when I went to the show, I was expecting a whole lot more than I got.
Yep, me too.
And it kept going, and these reveals would happen, and people would be like, oh no, this was totally set up, this was this and that. It's no, this fit your head canon.
I was
Rebecca Sugar was probably trolling in the background.
I was lost.
It was so, and I've seen this in other things where it's so dependent on it. It's like the Disney Star Wars movies. If you're not reading the books, you have no idea what's happening in the background.
I have an issue with some of the stuff, like when what's her name, Bo-Katan shows
Mm-hmm.
up in the Mandalorian, and it's supposed to be this big thing, and if you don't know who she is from the cartoons, it's like, what, why should I care?
I didn't watch Rebels. I had to go to my best friend and go, "Who's this? Am I supposed to know her? Do I
Yeah,
care?"
like, the Moff Gideon reveal with the dark saber, like the dark saber is inherently cool, right? You don't need to
Yes.
know the background of that weapon to go, oh crap, like it's the anti lightsaber, right?
Yeah.
That's self. And that's the problem with some of these creators who are so close to this stuff and devour fan reaction. And despite what people say, no, they're not all sitting there going snicker snicker, oh, we hate you. No, they're analyzing the snot out of response, because this is a business, right? And I
Yeah.
I do think that commercialism and that reducing everything to moments that you can put in a Twitter gif and share to get something trending, there's something getting lost in that. Because I agree with you, I do feel that I think that there's a very surface relationship to everything now, to the point that if something isn't spoken in a declarative I am statement, people can't follow it. And I
I
don't like that. I like movies like The Green Knight and The Fountain that you have to code, right?
yeah.
I love, I was waxing poetic about uh Sam Wilson's Captain America speech at the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier and why that's so brilliant. And of course, I had two assholes jumping on me. It's bad writing. No reason why.
It's not bad writing. They just don't.
They don't understand.
Okay,
They,
just because you feel something is appealing to political points you don't agree with does not mean that it's bad writing.
right. They don't understand that. Well, he offered no solutions. He's a black man with the moniker of Captain America. Do you have any idea the fine line he is towing here? Like,
And
that reaction proves it, right?
even more, the thing about heroes is,
They're
and
symbols.
it's not even that. It's I remember seeing a bit from there a few years ago. There was a teen group in Marvel. It was Miss Marvel and young Scott Summers
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
Miles and someone else. But there was this broken train track. And Miss Marvel was like, "No, we have to stay and fix it." And I'm like,
Right.
"Honey, you're heroes. You save the people. You don't actually fix the problem." And this is
That's a great
probably
way of putting it.
and
Yeah.
this is also probably a trope that came from the 40s and World War II, where it's
Yeah.
like, and I've heard that, the creators at the time struggled with this. Was It's like, okay, we can't not mention the war
Right.
going on because it's everywhere,
Yeah.
but we also can't just have Superman or Captain America one punch Hitler. What do we do? Well, you create the Red Skull, or you
Right.
specifically, and Hydra, or you specifically do stories of Superman in the trenches,
Right.
or in Vietnam, especially, they had him like in the
Yeah,
forest
with
with,
some really unfortunate yellow face racist art at the
yeah.
time.
So this is probably where we get the idea. It's the heroes save the people; they don't actually fix the
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
And it also comes back to, and I mentioned in another episode, where I said at some point, when Batman doesn't kill the Joker,
Right.
the blood of the Joker's victims is on Batman's hands a bit. And
Right.
someone in the comments pushed back because they were like, "No, but
Well,
he's
anytime you criticize Batman, someone goes, "Oh my god!" Yeah.
yeah." And I get where they were coming from, but and you could say, okay, well, it's the fault of Arkham Asylum. It's the fault of
the corrupt system theory of Gotham.
yes.
Yeah.
And so I get that, but it's you also have to at some point look at it and go, okay, but Batman is the one who has the ability to do something. And
Well,
I
at
don't
this point, they've got him letting Jason Todd kill people too. I mean, it's so, again, they're getting so into. I have diverged from what I think the core features of Batman are compared to the average Batman fan now.
yeah.
And so I've been, all right, I'm stepping away, right? You guys can have it. There's plenty of other things. My obscure nerds keep getting gobbled up in this Borg cube of commercialism, but that's fine, right? But, then when we get into this Borg cube phenomenon that not only, and I think this is where a lot of the tension comes in, and why I talked off the top about the big, why I'm so fascinated by the fact that problematic porn use is associated with stress reduction, using porn to reduce stress, because it seems now that people don't just like stuff. They need the world to validate the stuff they like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's setting yourself up for a lot of anxiety, for a lot of problems, because it's giving a very real external locus of control to your sense of self.
Yeah, and I have noticed the ability to self-validate is extremely low in our society.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I read an interesting thing from a psychologist I follow on Twitter, that it's because parents demanded performance from their children.
I saw that, and you know what? I believe that. And
I
I
do
think
too.
Sorry, I had to take a drink of
No
water.
problem. No, I think she was spot on that observation.
And here's the thing. People often point to the idea that the participation trophy has created a sense of entitlement in young people, which I do agree with. But I think also it contributes to this lack of ability to self-validate, because everything you do, if you do well-ish, or if you just show up, then you're rewarded, and it triggers that part of the monkey brain. And it's like, this is why I see parents who are like, well, it's the struggle with giving kids an allowance. Like, okay, here's the chores you do,
right,
but you probably shouldn't be giving kids an allowance for washing the dishes and taking the trash out, because it's something they're going to have to do for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think that's just, to me, the whole allowance thing was, it's important for kids to learn to understand what things cost, how to spend money. I think having a bit of money, and it's the idea of earning it, but I agree with you that that's life skills.
Yeah.
That's not something you do for a reward. The idea that everything needs to get rewarded. And I do hear that expressed in the way people talk about romantic partners as well, right? That it's somehow a reward for some, I don't know, something, as opposed to a connection with another sentient human.
And this is veering off a little, but it's another important point, I think. And there's all this talk about, oh well, women only want men who fit the rule of six, like six-figure income, six-pack.
Yeah, this thing blew me away.
And the problem is, when you try to form a connection on an app and you have so many options, you have to start finding really surface level ways to
make choices,
eliminate some of those options. And since it's not based on just meeting someone out and about or at a dinner party or being introduced by someone else, you start coming up with these really superficial ways because it's not about a spark or chemistry
Right.
or getting along or even shared interests,
Right.
really.
Right.
And so this is how we got to this reductiveness. And I do think it's kind of interesting that men complain, oh, well, women only want this. I'm sorry, I've seen the women in some porn where
Oh,
there's
it's
nothing to them besides plastic surgery.
and a whole lot of hair add-ons.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't see much difference between the superficiality of the
Oh,
two.
there's none.
And there's the joke, it's not even a joke, it's a fact that Thor takes off his shirt, and Captain America too, because of the female audience.
Yeah, that's I have a problem with that because it just seems like sometimes it's done cleverly. I
Yeah.
mean, I do give Taika Waititi credit for just being completely shameless with like way over the top to the point that I was so uncomfortable. And I think he really made a point with that was difficult, but I think valid. And that's why I love Taika Waititi. He's a bomb thrower in his work, and I do think that, and again, some men don't have a problem being depicted that way. It makes other men incredibly uncomfortable. And I think that both perspectives need to be valid.
Well, I make this joke that I like how Chris Hemsworth looks, I like how Jason Momoa looks, I don't necessarily like what they have to say. But
Oh, they're cavemen.
well, I don't think Chris Hemsworth actually has much of a personality.
I mean, I don't
I
know.
find him to be, but here's the thing. I don't say that I'm attracted to Chris Hemsworth
No.
or to Jason Momoa. I say I'm attracted to Thor, specifically first movie Thor. People, let's be very clear on this.
Okay, but here's the thing about, I'm going to defend Chris Hemsworth. I can't believe I'm doing this. Someone who doesn't have any depth can't pull off those goo eyes he throws
True.
at Natalie Portman.
I
Right?
I think he is good at playing a romantic hero.
And
He's
that takes
very
an
good
amount
at
of
that.
emotional depth and a willingness to be vulnerable.
And I wish movies would lean into that. The thing is, a lot of the romantic movies we have now are not tailored to that deep, looking deep into your eyes, absolute adoration. It's like that doesn't fit into most rom-coms we see
You
nowadays.
know what I was told about that?
Hmm.
It triggers too many people's anxiety. I'm like, oh, come on.
I I don't get, because like here's the thing. There's the scene in Dark World where Thor is explaining the convergence to her
Right.
using their hands
Right.
and just looking into her eyes, and I'm like, I am so sold.
Yeah.
Like I was so into that scene.
See he's good at that. Like, I can't say the guy's a complete moron. He
No,
digs deep for those scenes.
he does. And so it's like I'll give him credit with that. Again, I wish they would lean more into that than they do to the tee funny stuff
But
with
I
him.
I do think that the everything is so analyzed now that we've lost that ability to really um connect to emotions. You
Yeah.
can't use an algorithm and focus grouping and audience testing to slam dunk a romance like that.
Yeah.
That's something that just happens.
Yeah.
It's that scene in Superman the movie, do you like pink? Where this, very rough around the edges reporter lady is all of a sudden totally gaga.
And there's a vulnerability to that, isn't there? And I think
Yeah.
that's part of what really worked with Lois Lane
Yeah.
is, and especially in that era where she comes in and she's so tough, and she she knows how to fit in with the guys in
Right.
the bullpen
Yeah.
of the Daily Planet.
Yep.
And it's also kind of a cliche a bit of this tough woman who's just kind of waiting for the right man who's
But
strong enough to handle her.
that was the sort of don't talk about it element of second wave feminism,
Yeah.
right? Like with all the messaging, people still wanted, that was the era of the personal is political, and moments like that spoke to no, the personal is still personal, right? And I do
Mm-hmm.
think that when people are going through school and everything is postmodern deconstructed, they do lose touch with why emotional connections work and why they don't, and everything, like you said, when everything has to say something about society or the discourse, instead of just I like this and think it's shiny, that's not really being alive, right?
Yeah.
That's crunching data, that's not fully being a human. And I do think that um that is, they talk about actors being people pleasers, and people make fun of sort of the actor desperation a lot, but that's
Mm-hmm.
where it comes from. I mean, imagine doing that, because you feel that in the moment, right? You do feel that connection to the other person, and then you have to go, that wasn't real, that was just work. I
Well, look
need
at how
to,
many affairs happen on set.
yeah. Yeah. Now that's a collection of things, right? There are also
Yeah.
plenty of people who are great co-stars that couldn't stand each other.
Yeah.
But there
Which
is,
works almost even better for
yeah.
chemistry.
I mean, it's not that you fool yourself into thinking you're in love with the other person. It's just you had a moment of deep connection with another human, and your brain is designed to crave that. And so you have this really cool, intense experience, and everybody's like, oh my God, that was amazing. And everybody's exciting and it's working. And then you go back to the shit pile that is everybody telling you you're garbage everywhere you look. And it messes with your head.
Yeah.
I feel really, I had a tiny taste of what that's like. There's a reason I eventually chose to back away from doing projects for other people. I keep getting that maybe I should go do, community theaters. No, no, not now, because it does rip you apart,
Yeah.
especially now where it's not about the story and the characters. It's, oh, there was a pink and purple sky in episode 3 of Loki. That's bisexual coding. Like, fucking what?
There, in Encanto, Mirabelle has a butterfly that
Yeah,
is pink, purple, and blue.
yeah,
And also, uh, Isabella wears a lavender dress.
right.
And
Because that's
she,
not traditional colors of Colombia, right? Like, no,
no,
that's a statement.
yeah. So everyone's like, oh, this is, you know, the butterfly is proof that she's bi or that
Yeah,
Isabella is a
come on,
lesbian.
come
And I'm
on,
like,
come on. That's
I,
that's see that's and that's again about sexuality instead of, and it's not even about sexuality. It's about sorting people into easily managed categories,
yeah.
right? I mean, I did think, I know he took some crap for this, but I did think Anthony Mackie's comments on people not being able to accept a close friendship between two men that is just a close friendship. I have some friends who were really upset about his comments about that, because they wanted to be able to gay code Sam and Bucky.
Okay. That's the other point I was gonna make. Thank you for
Yeah.
reminding me when I was talking
Oh,
about
okay.
Tumblr. is any, because I mentioned that the biggest pair shipping in Frozen is still Anna and Elsa, and people love Thor and Loki, and it doesn't matter that it's
I'm
incestuous.
sorry. Oh my God.
It,
Freaks me out.
it any characters who are friends in anything, oh, they must want to bang.
Well, that's
And
like Kara and Lana in Supergirl.
they were the
That was
biggest ship there.
so screwed up. There was already lesbian representation on that show. But no, that wasn't good enough. Like,
No,
holy
but
shit.
it's because it was the characters that they wanted. And, oh, they have a connection. They get along. They're friends. People aren't allowed to be just friends anymore.
And I think that was the point that Anthony Mackie was making. Now, of course, his point is complicated by Sebastian Stan's performance. I think both are valid.
Yeah. And I don't think it would bother me so much if people didn't jump to see it everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, look, sometimes friends are just friends. It's like,
yeah,
I have these characters, and friendships are almost more fun to write than the actual relationships. And
nobody was more staggered than me when people started shipping the boss fight characters, because the idea of those characters are supposed to be like, the Legend of Zelda characters that were overgrown 8-year-olds,
Yeah. And also
I tried to see people's point of view, and I took some of it in and go, okay, let's try to make this work. But it knocked me over at first. Because I mean, that's me and me. Like, what? Thank you.
Oh, no. Haven't you heard about Self-Cessed?
What I have seen. I mean, I know there was some of that with Orphan Black, but holy, I don't want anybody to think that if they joke around and ship for fun, because I've done it. I love driving Witcher fanboys crazy. Geralt / Jaskier, or back in the day, Dandelion, when we were still allowed to call him that. I used to delight driving over serious fanboys crazy with that one, but I wasn't serious. I didn't get super upset. I get upset when a romance is badly done, because it's frustrating, because I start thinking there were ways this could have worked, just, not this way.
Yeah.
The problem is it takes an emotionally mature person to go there. And a lot of the people writing this stuff are not. They're such bundles of neuroses and anxieties that they can't take that leap, right? And I do think that when everything's defined by identity and sexuality, people do lose sight of sometimes things happen in life you just don't see coming.
Yeah.
And I did think it's interesting that a small percentage of people in the porn study said they watch porn for personal discovery, basically to see what they liked. And I was really surprised that number wasn't higher. Right? Because I know a lot of people struggling with identity right now, and gender identity and sexual orientation and all that stuff. And it's like, guys, these are categories to help you define things. These are not things that should be taking over your
they're
brain
not personality traits.
No, they don't say anything about you as an individual, right? It's just ways to sort of go, this is where I loosely group into this mess called humanity. And they've become so, I mean, the franchise that I got really upset with this was the Dragon Age franchise. That first game, every single romantic subplot was solid. Every single one. I was astounded at how different they all were. And even if I started off utterly despising a character, if I followed that path, it Oh my God, I like them. I adore them. They peel back like onions, right? You get into Dragon Age 2, some of that's still there. Some of it was much more, oh, we must have a lesbian romance, even though we don't really know how to write one that is adult and doesn't feel like, I shouldn't see the 600 square foot condo in a high fantasy romance storyline, right? I don't want characters shaving hearts into their pubic hair in high fantasy. I just don't. That's too real world, right? I want the sweeping gesture. And then you get into Inquisition and it's all just, as Jen Walters would say, smashing X plumbing into this other plumbing, right? It's all about, oh, you can have every permutation of sexual encounter except, a trans person. Creme just has to stand there. But it is just so decayed from these wonderful stories where, quite frankly, I didn't care about the gender of the character. I was so interested in them as a person. To this surface, I don't know what that was. It's like, let's make commentary on normalized X relationship, and the number of men, the male romance options for women in Dragon Age Inquisition that were liars drove me crazy. Zevran was a bullshit artist in Dragon Age Origins, but he knew how to tell the truth. Blackwall and the Iron Bull were collections of red flags. And then they made Cullen racist, which made me so sad. Because I felt bad for Cullen. Cullen had been through some shit in Dragon Age. Like, he is the character at the epicenter of shit goes down. You understand why he's a drug addict by the third game, right? And his story was one of the better ones in Inquisition, but the fact that, and it was apparently a tech thing with the scaling of the characters, but the fact that you could only romance Cullen as a human or an elf, I'm just like, Solus, I understood, because Solus is, spoilers for people who haven't played it, secretly an ancient elven deity. He's the Dreadwolf. I get why he wouldn't get with anybody but an elf. But Cullen, that made me sad, man. And we talked about on the bad writing episode about how bad writing is basically just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and make them stick. Good writing is intentional. It's the same thing. It just felt, the Dragon Age franchise has just gone from this wonderful, sweeping, epic fantasy romance series, as well as like existential threats and cool monsters, to really bad softcore porn. And it's such a letdown from those early experiences.
I admit I don't know much about Dragon Age.
Yeah, I know. Like, you're just taking my word for it here, but yeah, but it's just people listening who have played the games probably feel. I mean, even Mass Effect started to decay in that regard, and part of that was crunch. Part of it was, Dragon Age was David Gator losing his will to live. He was the main writer, main narrative director on the whole thing, and he felt like he pulled punches in Baldur's Gate because he himself is gay and he writes female characters very, very well. And so he had this EA fucked them around with Dragon Age 2 and forced them to turn another game around in 18 months after the release of Dragon Age Origins. And it's
EA did something disingenuous.
Anti-creative.
Imagine my shock.
Yeah, shocker. Exactly.